And I suppose that's where I was coming from. Or maybe, for example, what are they called? Orgies, to say if you get into one, this is what will happen. This is how you get closer to
Oh,
Satan, for example.
oh, I understand. I understand now. Sorry, I maybe misinterpreted your question. Of course, that's what exactly what I'm going to do. Sorry, my apologies. I didn't, whatever. I didn't connect that. I didn't think of your, I interpreted your question, but I guess I didn't understand really the full part of your question. So yeah, exactly. That's exactly what I'm doing. I just was thinking of God. I don't know why I was thinking of God.
Oh,
That's
you're in heaven.
Yeah, I guess so. But I was just thinking of like the Christianity and stuff, and I was like, I don't want to go down that rabbit hole. But yeah, that's exactly what I will be doing. Is looking at different, like yeah, Crowley, for example, did initiate or had an interest in risque. Well, for the viewers, I guess I'll just say risque group activities, and so, but he did that. But he used some of those but he did that and he instructed others to in his group to participate because of the ritual benefits of doing, or for him in his view and in his community's view, had benefits in doing so. That's exactly what we'll be looking at. Thank you for rephrasing the question for me to answer better. That's good.
No, that's lovely. And I guess, usually us as researchers, we somewhat research titles that we have interest in or have lived experiences in. Have you had a lived experience in terms of some of these new movements?
Well, I don't know. Well, actually, not really. Well, a little bit. Here, I'll try to explain quick. So, my mom and dad, my mom and my parents, some of my parents, my mom's side of the family is Catholic or Christian or Catholic, and mom is quite Catholic, but not as much as she used to be. She's still Catholic, but she doesn't. We don't go to church really as much as we perhaps she would like. But long story short, um, I grew up a little bit, I guess, in a Christian Catholic household, and I would go to church. I would go to church and whatever. It's all good. And then but I went to an elementary school that was Christian, like a Catholic elementary school, and it was brutal. It was horrible. My experience with some of the teachers there were not really that great. And really quick, I'm adopted. I'm from Ukraine. I was adopted, moved from Ukraine, and part of the at the school, elementary school, we had to do this curriculum called Fully Alive. It's about families and about like your birth mom, and it's about like exploring your connection with your birth mom, like with your mother and your family. And it was really, and I was just a kid, but it was really difficult for me to answer and go through that curriculum because it asked me to reflect on my birth, like on my family and my stuff. And because I was adopted, I didn't have those answers to those questions. And so the teachers, the particular, I'm not saying who, but the particular teacher and the principal was not very nice. And anyways, it was brutal. And they always would say, "What would Jesus do?" Like when they would be in an argument with my parents, my mom and dad really worked their butts off to not defend, yeah, to advocate for me to say Kiegan shouldn't have to do this curriculum because of the circumstances. And the teacher, who's little poo poo, would always say to dad and mom and me, but I didn't understand. I was just a kid. But she'd always say, "What would Jesus do?" And so that kind of phrase always kind of stuck with me through, like not always, but like but throughout some parts of my schooling, that kind of negative diatribe or that phrase kind of stuck with me. And so that's part of it. The other stories are my really, 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 really close family friends. Particularly, he's 95 or 94, maybe 96. He's really old. He's quite up there. His name is Jai Ram. But he's a Freemason, and ever since I was a
Ah,
little kid, he would wear his Masonic ring, and I'm like, Jai, can I have your ring? This was as a kid. I'm paraphrasing, but like he's like, no, you need to be a Freemason, and then you can have a ring just like mine. And so I wanted to be a Freemason for a long time, but I don't. It's expensive, and so I don't have the. It is in terms of like paying the initiation fees and paying through the grades. It's more. It's a lot of money that I just at this stage in life don't have, and so
mm,
I've given up at this stage to be a Freemason because of the expense, the financial commitment. But anyway, so that's another anecdote that kind of positions me to why I'm interested in religious movements or new religious movements and etc. And the last part is I watched some documentaries on Crowley on YouTube, like in my grade 8, when I was in grade 8, when I was like whatever, when I just started being a teenager. I watched some YouTube like theatrical kind of documentaries. There's some historical components to it now, of course, because I know about it, but they're more kind of for entertainment. Like these documents, they're still good, but anyways, now as reflecting back, I can see some of the more I can see some issues with the documentary that I wouldn't have seen when I was a kid. But anyways, I really like thrown aback about like, holy crap, this Crowley guy is really exciting. Why can't my life be as exciting as his? But as a kid, I'm like, yeah, I don't think I want to have necessarily the same lifestyle as him. But I just thought this guy was really interesting. And so I decided, so when I got into university, I took a History 115, my very first history class with Dr. Yvonne Petry, and I learned that I could study demonology and witchcraft at university. I'm like, oh, I want to do this. So I did, and I did, yeah. And then so I did my honors on that topic, and then I'm like, maybe I'll go back to Yvonne. Dr. Petry said, you don't necessarily have to stay in early modern history from 1450 to 1700. You can look at your interest, like you look at some of the interests you have in early modern history and apply like religious ideas and stuff like that and apply that in different contexts. So I'm like, okay, I can do potentially a master's degree on religion and taking some of the ideas I built from my honors degree into the modern era. And that's what I did. So those are the three main, or some of the examples I'm giving you, that kind of propelled me to do this kind of work. But education, that's a different story. But education, why I transitioned out of history into education, that's a different story. I don't know if you want to get into that, but that's okay.
No, I think, you've been so candid. And like I said, the lived experiences, they're what push you into what you look at essentially. And we'll go into education after this question. So, as I was doing my own research and I was looking at the 19th century and the occults, they were vibing in France. Is that somewhere that you'll be looking at in terms of how that just took on and it became a thing in France?
Well, I might have to. In my MA thesis, I didn't. I focused specifically on England and Italy,
Mhm.
but I did have background and context of France. But for this degree, for this PhD, I probably will have to describe, well, I will. I will describe the occult scene in Europe, but right now I don't have a good answer in how far or in what ways will I go about looking at modern France and the fin de Sal and looking at that. I don't have an answer for you right now, but I do know for a fact that I will have a chapter
Mm.
laying the groundwork, like the background about explaining the occult scene and even in the book idea. I'm going to have a chapter on placing the occult scene in the broader context of Europe in the 19th and early 20th century. Then I'll also have another, maybe in the same section, chapter, but then I'll also describe the educational landscape of that era or of that time and explain what it was like being a student. I'll see, but I'll try to describe what it was like being educated in the 1800s and the 1900s and explain how, and just explain and kind of put into perspective, like the historical figures I'm looking at, kind of explaining how, well, they weren't just all of a sudden have a master, like they never all of a sudden just didn't have a PhD or whatever. They went through different stages throughout their life, educational journeys to get their credentials. So I will for sure look at educational, like the history of education in the 18 and 1900s. And I'll also perhaps in the same chapter look at how occulticism influenced or vice versa influenced each other. So of course, I just don't know yet how that's going to look like.
No, I think it would be really good. And as I was thinking before we had our chat, and I was like, actually, I think, I don't know, but this is me thinking out loud and it's not my research, but I got really
Yeah.
excited. And I was like, if you compared Gandhi to one
Yeah,
of the ones that you have, because he was Indian, moved to the UK, had this profound education,
yeah,
went back and became a massive leader who fought for people, who was fasting, which links into the Bible, and to change things. But he just took things, concepts,
yeah,
in my opinion anyway, from the Bible and from some of the books in terms of Buddhism, and
yeah,
he turned it into this is my movement, to
yeah,
a point where he had Miraben from the UK, who was a white lady who moved to India, and he said, I don't want to get married. And she was not a disciple. She was not his wife, but she
mm,
followed his ways and fought the path for other
interesting.
women, which was quite interesting. So I was just thinking about that, but it's not your research, but I thought it sounds interesting. I hope, you find it interesting as
No,
well.
I do. Well, that is interesting. Like again, I will have a component on like a lot of these individuals that will be looking at have similar experience, or not necessarily the same experiences that you just mentioned, like in the example you mentioned, but lots of these individuals, at least in some way or another, are connected in having like a similar kind of breakthrough moment or an experience that kind of triggers them. I'm making an umbrella overarching statement, but
Yeah.
there's some kind of thing that happened in their life that propels them to say, or to move forward and say, I'm going to do things differently. And this is and perhaps because of their status and position in society, some perhaps had an easier way about going about doing it than others. But exactly, that's really cool anecdote you're sharing with me.
Lovely. I guess the next question then is, have you started thinking about your ethics and how
I
you're
don't
going to go about with that, or you don't need it for
I
your
don't need
research?
ethics.
Oh,
No,
aren't you
not in
lucky?
this, not for my dissertation. Originally, I was like with the other PhD topic, I was going to have interviews, survey, questionnaires, but for this dissertation, it's not. I'm excited because I don't have to go through ethics. But at the university, but I'll preface, at the University of Saskatchewan, and at most, I'm sure at other universities too, you have to, all grad students have to take like a non-credit, like ethics module course. Like this is like how to not plagiarize, like this telling you like educating or helping grad students realize that. But I'm sure we should know that already. But like to not plagiarize. This is copyright. These are some copyright guidelines, and
Mhm.
this is what fair use means. And so there are things that I had to do in my degree program that I've already done about ethics, but to actually go through an ethics board review of my dissertation, I don't have to go through that because I'm not doing interviews, participatory research, anything like that. So mine is just focusing. It's more mine's looking. My material that I will be using is historical data, kind of like critical analysis or whatever. I'm doing an analysis, a textual analysis of material, like archival stuff.
No, I love it. I guess the next question is, why do you think your work or your research is worth a PhD?
Well, I guess everybody who's doing a PhD thinks that their work is PhD, but um, I would say again that people need, if you're, for anybody who's listening, I guess, who are contemplating a graduate degree, is 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 do something you enjoy. And from my experience, I told you all that yeah, I transitioned to a different topic, which is the best darn decision I've ever made. Listening to my parents, I don't always listen and get there and listen to their advice, but this was the best advice they gave me. But I would say, in reflection, for anyone interested in doing graduate degree, is is be truthful to yourself. I know that's sometimes hard, but be truthful to yourself, and be truthful, I mean, and be honest with yourself, and do something you're passionate about. And there's a famous book published in 1987 called called Do What You Love and the Money Will Follow. And I forgot who wrote the book, but anyways, that I think is certainly true. And so I guess my work deserves, or whatever, should become, or I should earn a PhD. Well, I guess no. I will say this. I'll say that. I'll let the you call it a viva, but in here we just call it a oral exam or
Mhm.
defense. I'll let the people at the defense be the ones to determine if it's a PhD, if it's worthy of a PhD. That's what I'll say. Because I certainly think it is, but it's not up to me to get to. So
No, I think it is. I think it is. And I guess, in terms of your work, because you've just started, like you said, in your opinion, are you aware of the weaknesses and the limitations, or you haven't identified them yet?
well, I'm sure there are. I haven't really identified. I haven't really thought much about the limitations or weaknesses of, but of course there will be. Um, Again, it's really I'm working through it, but it'll be really important to describe my project outcomes or my not deliverables, but my outcomes of what not only describing what the dissertation will do, but also have this commentary in the dissertation and in the defense in the proposal candidate exam, describing to the committee and others what the thesis or what the dissertation won't do, or what my dissertation won't comment on, or what I won't comment on. That's really important. And then once I figure that out, then I can make a better informed comment on what the limitations and weaknesses are of this project. So that's my cop out.
No, it's not a cop out because I think you're like this is conceptualization, isn't it, in terms of your phase, and then you're going to implement, and then you'll start to identify, the different variables. And I think I can't wait to have a part two with you because I think it'll be really good for us to understand, your journey. So I'm looking forward to
All
having a
right.
chat with you soon. I guess the next question is, in your opinion, do you think having a PhD or a master's in terms of higher education breaks the poverty life cycle, or do you think no, Noma, it doesn't?
Oh, it absolutely does. And my dad and mom are perfect examples. They're both first generation university students, and they're first in their entire families to earn university degrees. And I don't need to bash my parents and their families, but or not bash my parents, but didn't come from very wealthy families. They're poor families. And so mom and dad really worked their butts off to earn a university degree, and they didn't have the support systems that I have had. And so, of course, I 1,000,000% agree with you that, or maybe not agree with you, but I will agree with your comment. I don't know if that's what you believe, but it's with your comment that exactly is earning or having the opportunity to go to schools, whatever that schooling is, if it's primary, secondary, post-secondary, and earning a degree or earning a diploma or a certificate or whatever opportunity you have, that's just that's awesome. And I think it totally does get from at least from my parents' point of view, it got them out of their own circle, like their own not poverty. They're not destitute, but they didn't come from more
Mm.
poorer families. And so um, and not to say that's bad, but or anything like that. I'm not making a negative comment, but I'm just saying for them, it certainly did give them a better quality of life, having the opportunity, making the opportunity to go. Like they had the opportunity, they were very smart and they got into university, but they kind of made the opportunity. Like if you know what I mean, they like the opportunity was there, but no one was knocking on their door saying, "Go!" Like we're going to give you money to go to university. Mom and dad had to work their butts off to pay to get through university, and I didn't. So I'm pretty privileged and special that I had that opportunity to do whatever I wanted by volunteering, doing all that fun stuff. When I know other students never had, might not, or probably don't have that opportunity because they don't have mommy and daddy paying for the bachelor's degree. So I'm really privileged and really proud and really thoughtful and really reflective of how important my parents are. So, but to answer your question, sorry, yes, 100,000,000% that I think earning and having the opportunity to earn a education improves the poverty life or gets people, I think, most likely. I'm sure maybe there's an odd case, but most likely gets people out of poorer or poverty level circumstances or lives.
No, I love that. And, a lot of people that have been here previously in terms of PhD Hard Talk, they've agreed with what you've said. And they've said, I've relocated from one country to another to provide for my family. Yes, I am in university, but I have to work day and night, literally, to provide for my family back home. And if it wasn't for this education, I wouldn't be here. I'll be stuck, back at home. So no, thank you very much. You'd be glad to
Oh,
know that this is the fact. Sorry.
well, sorry, I'll let you finish your thought. I was going to say, like, okay, I interrupted you, so I might as well finish. I was going to say, well, I was going to say, yeah, the transform. I know it sounds kind of cheesy, but the transformative power of education is real. I mean, sorry, the power of education, learning and education, is so transformative in so many areas of life. And so, I'm very humbled and very privileged, and I recognize that, and that's part of the reason why I transitioned out of history. I think I'm thinking more being more reflective and more meaningful. But I'm think part of the reason why I want my work to be meaningful or have an impact, not necessarily for gratification. Well, it's nice to say that my work is important, but that's not the reason why, really. My reason is because I want to give back to my communities that I belong to. I'm a Roma gypsy, like if you like Roma communities in like from Europe. My dad has indigenous heritage, and so and from my village in Ukraine, I was adopted. I was only 3, but still, when we went back to Ukraine in 2019, only one person in my Gypsy community, or my Roma community, could read and write. Some lady, I don't know their name. We never got to meet them, but I'm just saying, earning this PhD and making my work accessible for everybody, not just for a small elite intellectual group of people, is really important. I think, well, yeah, it's really important to me. And yes, I can sugarcoat it and say that I'm making this comment because I think it's important. Is yeah, I want the PhDs for me. Yeah, it's like, yeah, I get that, and I know it is. I'm doing because I want to do it for me. But I'm just saying there is a community component to it, and I want to give back to my communities that I've because I've been given a lot of privilege. So I'm just saying that. Sorry for interrupting you, but I think that's really important that I want to get across.
No,
That I'm
I
not just
think
some guy, I'm not, sorry, I'm just not some person who is just this overprivileged person that isn't really reflective of his privilege. And so I want to just make that out there that I'm thinking about my privilege and my place in my community. Okay.
no, I love that. And I think, just to say, your honesty and your ability to be candid is really something that's really humbling, because I think most people, they're oblivious of the fact that in Europe, they're like even in the UK, we speak English, but a lot of people can't read and write. They can't count. And there are a lot of people who are below the poverty line, and it affects their mental health.
Mhm.
And so, even with project dissemination to the world, we're trying to disseminate our research to those communities. That's why it's verbal, because most people can't read, right? So, if you can articulate your research and your passions, maybe somebody might be inspired to say, let me pick up a pen and a paper and start writing, because it does have that huge impact. So thank you very much, for actually thinking, reflecting, and sharing, your thoughts. I guess for the final question then is, do you think PhD hard talk is beneficial for researchers, universities, and the wider communities? Or do you think, no, Noma, it's not working, call it a day, this is it, it's done?
Well, well, no, I think that PhD Hard Talk is a great not only avenue of exploring other people's work and sharing and disseminating that work with others, but I think the work that you and PhD Hard Talk is doing, I think, is really important, particularly in the polarized world that we live in, because you're making again you're interacting, you're giving other scholars, perhaps marginalized scholars or scholars on the periphery or whatever you want to call that, you're giving people a voice. And I think regardless of me who has privilege compared to someone who might not necessarily have the same privilege. You're giving everybody space to share their ideas and communicate, and that's really not humbling, but that's really nice and really gratifying to know, and reassuring that you're making that effort, and PhD Hard Talk is there um, to support grad students and people and students who are interested in grad school, but not know exactly how to go about it, or might want to listen, get some advice, or listen to PhD Hard Talk and listen to what other scholars have to say who've perhaps gone through similar experiences, or experiences that they can share that might help, inspiring other young academics who might not know if they want to go to grad school, give them the ideas and the tools necessary to make the best decisions that they can make to get into grad school. So that's really important. I think the PHR talk, I think as a platform, is again really essential for universities, not just in England, but I think in other areas or other parts of the world. And so I'm really excited for the work that you've been doing, not just the interview, but like even since I started this new Instagram channel of mine, or account, since I've been following you guys, I've just been overwhelmed to see how much effort and so much integration that you've had with the scholarly community around the world, and I think we need more of that. So yes, 100%. We need your platform at other schools, and make it even more exciting, and for people who are interested in becoming, I guess, better scholars. Sorry, I'll finish there. I was rambling at the end, so.
No, thank you so much for your time today. For everyone at home who wants to interact with Kiegan, details are at the bottom. Don't forget to share, like, and subscribe. And remember, hashtag project dissemination to the world and hashtag sustainable knowledge to the world. So please, again, I hope at home you'll be excited as I am to say thank you to Kiegan. Write your comments and let's have a discussion. Thank you again, Kiegan, for your time today.
Thank you, Noma, for this great opportunity to share some of my research and what I'm going through. And thank you so much for taking the time and listening to my rambling and fast talk. Sometimes I don't realize how fast I talk. And so I really appreciate you bearing with me and staying tuned to what I have to say. It's really nice having the chance to talk to you. And hopefully we can collaborate more.